And so as I sat with this question, I found out that I felt trapped in my marriage, in my finances, and in my life. Every single bit of security was ripped away from me. I was asking myself, like, wow, what in the hell am I going to do with my life? Just launched my business, had no solid income, no college degree. I was met with this deep insecurity and fear. So I'm 39 years old, married with 2 beautiful kids, building 2 businesses, buying up rental properties. We're living the American dream. It's like everything you'd want short of a white picket fence. Until one day, I wake up in my friend's tiny guest bedroom, without a family, alone, headed for divorce, and no idea where my next paycheck is going to come from. But it's the greatest day of my life. And you're probably thinking, okay, Carrie, please tell us how such a sad situation could be so great. Well, here's the full story. When I was 39 years old, I was doing all of the right things according to society. With my 14-year marriage, my 2.0 kids, we were building these businesses as entrepreneurs and doing all the right things, had this well-diversified portfolio. Until one day, I woke up and I realized that I was following all these rules and living this American dream for everyone else, which I know sounds like your typical midlife crisis, doesn't it? And I was asking myself this question, like, whose life am I really living here? And I realized that I wanted more, but I also realized how deeply afraid I was. I was afraid of saying what I wanted in my marriage and in my career. I was afraid of being judged by everyone. And I was also afraid that no matter how much I saved or restricted, it may not ever be enough to be financially free. And so as I sat with this question, I found out that I felt trapped in my marriage, in my finances, and in my life. And this desire for change, that's what ultimately led to me waking up in that tiny guest bedroom without a family and no idea where that next paycheck is going to come from. Every single bit of security was ripped away from me. And I was asking myself, like, wow, what in the hell am I going to do with my life? You know, I had just launched my business. I had no solid income, no college degree. And I was met with this deep insecurity and fear. I mean, this is what I look like. And the only thing not pictured is my best friend chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, because we spent a lot of time together that year. So over the next few months, though, I went on a search for the answer to that question because I wanted to feel free, both inside and out. And so I hired myself a coach and I got busy working on my mindset. I started examining these hidden scripts that we all have, whether we're conscious of them or not. And they're kind of playing in the back of our mind all the time. And so as I was looking at these, the ones that came to the surface were things like, you are not enough, you won't have enough money, and don't be selfish and ask for too much. So the through line in all of it was something like, be afraid, and there will never be enough. And so what was my money script? Well, it was fear, scarcity, lack, and it was presenting itself in my life as this anxiety and stress. And I would do these things like analyze my numbers all the time because I wanted to feel a sense of control. And so as I dug deeper into some of these beliefs, I chose to stop fixating on all those numbers and to lighten things up a little, while rewriting a new narrative that I like to call the story of more than enough. So every morning in this time period, I would wake up and I would ask myself this question, which was, how would an abundant person live today? And I really sat with that. And every time I would feel that insecurity start to creep back in, I consciously chose not to pay attention to it, and I would pivot over here to trust, to believing in something more, even though I had no idea how I was going to make enough or get to FI as a single mom. And so little by little, as I was shifting these thoughts, I started to create a really amazing new life for myself. So a friend of mine told me in this time period that she was selling her house, and I asked if I could buy it. And that's when I left that tiny guest bedroom after 9 months. And I was able to finance my own home through the bank with a cosigner. I also created several side hustles to stable things out because I wanted to fund my dream and passion of coaching because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And the whole time I am like opting out of fear and choosing trust and feeling the scarcity and believing in abundance. And in less than 4 years, I was able to scale my income from 0 to over 6 figures without any child support or alimony. I then advocated for my rental properties in court, and I was able to scale my net worth to over $500,000. And then I was able to pay off 2 houses within 4 months of each other, which helped me to become officially debt-free and allowed me to hit FI on my 42nd birthday, which was so far ahead of schedule than I ever predicted. And I got to this point where I was just like, how in the world did this happen in such a short amount of time? And it was because I changed the script from scarcity to abundance. And it was from cultivating this inner place of security that I was able to then create that in all of my outcomes in my environment. And so I want to pause here for a second because chances are high we all have had relatives who lived through the Great Depression, which increases the likelihood that we've all experienced scarcity in our finances. And the tricky part can be recognizing what that actually looks like because it's normal, right? So I know some of you are already at FI, but I'd love to ask you what are some of the ways that you have seen it show up in your finances? How have you experienced it or felt it? Yeah.
I grew up in was not a Great Depression situation, but like my dad was from a poor family and he kind of, I felt, carried that through our family. So there was always the feeling of penny pinching. Like, oh, you can't have the nice milk. You have to get powdered milk. This is the story that my sisters tell when they were younger because they're older than me. My parents wouldn't even buy like the milk at the store that was pre-made. He would insist that they get the powdered milk and then mix it up and put it in the fridge. He's like, you can't even tell the difference.
Hmm.
Continue through my sister's childhoods, and then me and my brother, and then that carried through into my behavior about money throughout my youth. Like I felt like I was being spendy compared to the way my dad was, but I was still like worrying inside, like, oh, I can't get this beer because it's like, $10 at the restaurant or whatever. And I would just feel like when something didn't feel like a good deal, I would feel clutching in my chest.
Yeah.
Even when there was no way I would have a shortage of money, I would just still feel it. Like,
yeah,
it's been hard to like let that go and to be like, guess what? I can still do that and still remain.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. Anyone else have any? Yeah.
I didn't even realize I did it until recently, but anytime I'm making a purchase, I feel the need to justify it. It like, qualify. I did this thing, but don't worry, I paid for my flights on point, so it doesn't matter. So even though I can't afford it, still feeling the guilt.
Right.
Spending and feel the need to overcompensate. And I didn't grow up for, but there's definitely, like, I watched my grandparents, they have millions of dollars, but they don't feel rich. Still take home Parmesan packets from going out to the put it in. So I felt like carried down, and so the guilt of indulgence.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that guilt is so insidious, and it's so common. Like some of the other things are like one thing I did all the time is anxiously checking the stock market. overly restricting yourself when you have money to spend, or like you said, that tightness in your chest or your gut when you're spending or when you're looking at your accounts. And a really common one that I see a lot with my clients is this general feeling like you're just behind or you're not going to make it to 5 fast enough. So those are some of the more common ways that I see it. So I want to contrast that now with what abundance looks like. So this could be just a desire to be generous. That sense of certainty that you know that you're exactly where you need to be right now. You don't need to be anywhere else. Or maybe it's a regulated nervous system, right? This feeling of ease and lightness in your body as you're looking at your numbers. Or maybe it's looking at your accounts with gratitude, regardless of how much is or isn't in there. So now that we have the contrast, I want to offer you a perspective shift and a few things that you can do to speed up your path to 5 if you haven't gotten there yet, and just feel that security today. You don't have to wait to feel that. So before I share those tips, though, I want to start by taking a minute to talk about energy. So many brilliant thinkers of our time have stated that the 21st century is going to be the age of energy. We now have cars that run on solar energy. Scientists are discovering more about the power of nuclear energy. And every day, people are waking up to the fact that they also are made up of energy. Now, the 21st century has also given rise to this epidemic unlike anything that we have ever seen before, which are these unprecedented levels of anxiety. You could also call that insecurity. Now, physicists will claim that only 5% of our universe is made up of matter. 95%, the rest of it, is energy. And that includes our minds and our bodies. So as more people begin to grasp this concept, we can start to see that everything that we see, everything that we feel, and everything that we do is a type of energy. One of my heroes, Joseph Campbell, he wrote The Hero's Journey, and he said that money is congealed energy. And by releasing it, we release life's possibilities. And I love that. And I know some of you might be hearing this and thinking it's a little woo-woo mystical stuff, but just stick with me because now we have science to back it up and explain what happens energetically when we shift our mind and emotions away from fear or scarcity and toward a mindset of trust. So here are the 4 tips I want to share. The first thing, I would invite you to see your script and shift your energy. So what do I mean by that? Well, the way that we talk to ourselves is so important for more reasons beyond just self-esteem, right? Obviously, being kind to ourselves, it has an impact on our level of confidence. But energetically speaking, the voice inside of our heads, it dictates the level of energy that we have available to utilize in our bodies. So when you feel anxious about money, for example, that voice inside your head, it starts to speed up, right? And we might say these things like, oh, I have to go here and I have to go there and I don't know how I'm going to make or save enough, right? And so that energy is gaining steam throughout the mind and the body. And since both of those are connected, the mind is picking up the energy of anxiety and translating it through stress in the body, which then creates a negative chemical response that gets emitted into your environment. So when somebody is starting to work through their fears and anxieties, your life can change pretty quickly because now you're freeing up all these vast amounts of unutilized energy and you are directing it and focusing it toward creating the financial outcomes or whatever it is that you want to create. So, and that's what happened in my life as well. So that's energy. So the next thing I want to suggest is to surrender for security. And this is the one I get the most resistance on because, and I get it, letting go of what is familiar and what is known is scary, right? Like we all want to know what is going to happen. We want to control the events that happen to us and to feel safe. But in the same way that a bird cannot hold on to its perch and fly, we also cannot grasp onto anything and truly be free. And our human instinct is always to want to feel that safety, right? We hold on to maybe some of these old thoughts, these stories and the patterns because it feels okay, right? But then the attaching to those is going to create that safety, but it will not allow for growth to occur. So how exactly do you apply this? What does that look like? Well, what I tell people is to just notice where are the situations and the circumstances that you're trying to control and just pause. And then you drop into your body and you notice, where do you feel that fear or that anxiety? And you want to stay with the physical sensation and allow yourself to fully feel it. And as you do that, you get to this point where you can start to relax and release it. And it's in that process of allowing yourself to fully feel whatever it is that your emotions start to lose power over you. So for me, it was when I surrendered some of my deepest fears that's when I accessed true security. And in that process of letting go, I discovered what really mattered to me, which for me was living a life true to what I wanted. The next one I'm just going to lightly touch on because I dove into this last year more deeply, but it's really serious. So I want you to pay attention. This is so important because I want you to play and just lighten up, right? Who here likes Monopoly? The 4-hour marathon or 10, I don't know how long it takes. Well, I like to look at not just money, but life as that, like kind of a game, right? It adds levity and it makes the journey to FI this really fun, exciting adventure. I think the trap lies when we start to accumulate these assets and then we want to fiercely protect them or we don't know what to do with them. And that's when things get a little too serious. So when you put that spreadsheet aside and you allow yourself to play, you're now quieting that mental chatter, you're releasing stress, and your emotional energy starts to raise higher. And so even for people who are working maybe in corporate, you can even adopt a play mindset with that as well. And this is what my friend Alan Watts has to say. I think I'm going to marry him in my next life, by the way. He said, "This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize that it is play." And so to shift into this, to stop taking things too seriously, it takes one single simple quality, which is acceptance, right? Accepting yourself, your finances, and your life as it is, that will lead to delight. And I describe delight as this sense of freedom that emerges from an appreciation of the richness of being alive. And when you adopt an abundant mindset, you are naturally going to recapture more time for yourself because now you've learned to come to acceptance much more quickly. So, for example, when I was in scarcity, I remember these times where I'd be looking at the stock market and it would be going down for like 6 days in a row. And I could feel this sensation of like, oh no, like what if, where's this going? And I was literally watching the commas drop off of my net worth. And I'm thinking like, when is this ever going to end? You know, has anybody ever felt that way before? Anyone? Just me? But once I started practicing awareness or acceptance, instead of spending my time blaming the stock market or worrying or resisting what had happened, I was able to move on so much more quickly. And you end up saving so much time and energy when you do that, which adds another level of efficiency to your path to FI. So I want to go back to delight for 1 second because in order to get to this, you could also call it joy. If you want to access that and make it sustainable, We have to be able to let go of this quest for security out there and do the work in here. And that is where I believe is where our greatest resource lies. So by doing all these things, by shifting your story, by surrendering to all the things you can't control and lightening up, you're not only going to speed things up, you also are going to create a life for yourself that is filled with security and satisfaction. So to help you all along your journey, I have a guide if you want to take me up on it. It's just a free playbook that walks you through some simple mindset and emotional practices to help you examine what is your story, maybe even explore where did it come from, and work through some of the emotions, because I don't know about you, recently, in the past year, I took a deeper dive on this. And when you go through the process, you can release things you didn't even know were there. And that opens up more capacity for you to then create whatever it is that you want. So there's a link you can go to access that. And if you want to continue the conversation, find me on Instagram. You can hit me up on my podcast. I'd love to talk more with you about all this. So to wrap things up, I have learned through all of my research and all of my work with my clients that there are these other ways to get to FI that aren't so numbers focused or logical or linear, right? It's this approach that creates wealth starting from the inside out. And then you end up with this unshakable sense of security that is so confident that you will always have and you will always be enough. And I got to tell you, the more that I go on, I'm just seeing FI through this totally different lens. It's this lens that says, yes, these numbers are kind of important, but what if the way that we experience life, what if the way that we see, the way that we feel, what if that's a better litmus test of the independence that we are also fired up about? And so the next time that you feel like you're missing out on something or you're lacking something in your life, I just want you to know that on the other side of scarcity is true freedom. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think you have to wait to hit your FI number to feel that, and that you can have an ROI today that offers you so much joy, deep levels of delight, and a perspective on life that knows with certainty that there is always more than enough. So thank you.